plant-based.
Totally.
And you were in the military as well, so it's so interesting that like you went from the military
Yeah.
of like a very stringent lifestyle with exercise and into bringing that stringentness into yoga. And it's
Totally.
interesting because I feel like a lot of people that do yoga, they feel like it's like a very relaxing type of like exercise and a very like chill type of zen type of like philosophy. But you
Yeah.
have a totally different approach on it.
Yeah,
So
totally. How did I get? So there's a few questions, a few things to unpack
yeah,
from there.
absolutely.
How did I get into yoga, and then how did I get into plant-based living, and is it connected to yoga? So I think I'll work backwards with yoga specifically. I've been practicing and teaching yoga longer than I've been predominantly plant-based. When I first started teaching, this was about end of 2017, early 2018 is when I started teaching yoga, and I was still an omnivore. I was just eating anything. I think I would consider myself to be more of an intuitive eater, so I just ate whatever was available. It wasn't until I really started in these past couple of years having these really big breakthroughs spiritually that I realized that there was layers to things. And for me to reach this next layer, this next step, I think the level of devotion needed to be a little bit higher. So that looks like making sacrifices. That looks like, stepping into something that was perhaps outside of my wheelhouse, out of my comfort zone. And yeah, my approach to yoga, I think you're right. I think there's a conception idea that people think when they think of yoga, and they think that it's this very relaxing and calming practice, and that we're there to just sort of zen out or mellow out. And I think the practice can be that. And there's so many different styles and forms and manifestations of yoga. For me, yoga was a pathway to discovering resilience, a pathway to unearthing things in myself that I didn't know I was capable of doing. So my first yoga class was about 15 years ago at a local LA Fitness in Dallas, Texas. And I got hired as a salesperson. This is before I joined the military. Right. And one of the things that I had to do was take all the fitness classes in that room. Spin classes, Zumba classes. I had to do all of that. One of the things that I had to do was a yoga class. And I'd always consider myself, at least at that time, to be relatively fit, someone that liked to work out and exercise and run. And I noticed that when I did this yoga class, I was drenched in sweat. Yeah. And I'm in this room and I can barely touch my toes. And I look to my right and there's this 60-year-old woman that's doing everything. She's, bouncing on her hands and flipping backwards and doing all the things. And I was just so shocked at how unflexible I was, how difficult of a time I had during that class, how hard it was for me to breathe. And so fast forward to, 2013, 2014, I joined the military. I was an aircraft mechanic in the Air Force. And one of the first things that I noticed was the ways in which everyone that I worked with had such a hard time with the job. The job was very physically demanding. We're on our knees, we're ducking under jets. So getting ourselves in very difficult, weird angles with tools and power tools and trying to work, doing this very heavy maintenance work. And because I had a sort of relative yoga practice, a very physical asana practice, asana meaning the physical practice of yoga postures, I noticed that it was easier for me. It was easier for me to squat down and sit and squat and sort of remove parts and change panels and do things compared to some of my colleagues and some of my friends. When I left the military in 2017, I was sort of at a loss. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. Yoga wasn't even in the top 20 of the things that I thought I'd be doing with my life. And I stumbled into a yoga studio when I moved to LA and literally never left. I worked back in the day at this studio. They had this thing where you wouldn't even get paid. You just worked as a cleaner. I cleaned toilets, I cleaned the mats, I cleaned the floor.
Is she getting ramen? We'll be right back after this commercial break. Hey guys, my name is Arjun. If you do enjoy what we're talking about, I actually have a book called Wisdom Through Psychology that you can get on Amazon, or you can get a signed copy from the link in the description. So be sure to check it out if you don't already have that book. And it takes less than 5 minutes a day to read.
So yeah, man, I get out of the military, I'm working at this yoga studio. I'm not really getting paid, it's just a work trade situation, just so I can get a free membership. And a lot of life then was taking a lot of classes, working at the yoga studio. I basically lived there. I was taking 2 to 3 yoga classes per day. And finally, a friend of mine who ended up becoming my yoga instructor, he asked me, he said, you know, would you like to be a yoga teacher? Have you thought about that? And I said, hey man, there's no way. Like, I just like doing this, but I can't see myself teaching.
Yeah.
I have a crazy fear of like public speaking and fear of like being in front of people. Like, that's just not my vibe. But just for shits and giggles, like, how much is it? How much would it cost to do this like yoga certification? And he gives me a price tag. He's like, okay, with, you know, you were in the military before, so you get a discount. And he said some number, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was something like $2,500.86. And I checked my account. I checked my checking account, and at that time, to the cent, $2,586 to the very cent is how much money I had left.
You had the exact amount of money. So did you see it as like maybe it was like a sign or something?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, because
Wow.
at that time I was really struggling, man. I was living on my friend's couch, paying like $300 a month. I was doing DoorDash and Uber, and I was just doing whatever I could to sort of like make ends meet. And when I saw that, it was such a clear sign. It was such a clear sign of, you know, you love this thing, why not like invest in yourself? Why not take the plunge? $2,000 is a lot of money, but at the same time,
So you went like all in, like
I went all
every
in.
single cent you had.
Everything
you just put
that
it
I-
in there. You're like, this is it.
I had a teacher one time that told me that in order for us to really build ourselves, we sometimes have to go down to zero. And to me, that was a literal way that I went down to zero to be able to step into this next stage of my life. And it changed everything. It literally changed my life, not just physically, mentally, emotionally, but financially. I mean, everything for me changed from that one decision of making that plunge and making that choice. So yeah, ever since then, I've continued to still live at yoga studios. And now I'm, you know, very, very happy to like run my own studio. I've been a director at different yoga studios. I've done so many teacher trainings. I've taught other teachers now how to teach yoga and business of yoga workshops, and my life completely changed from that moment. And now my biggest joy is to be able to create that space for other people to make that plunge and to make that decision to live a life that is more rooted on what does it mean to live like a self-actualized life, and how do we incorporate that into our everyday life. So, and I think that now for me, living plant-based is an essential part of what that looks like.